It's been a long time, but it's now only a few days left until the Overwatch League is finally back. Of course, the major change for this upcoming season is that the Overwatch League will be playing on the beta build for Overwatch 2, arguably the most radical change the league has ever seen, with the game going from 6 vs 6 to 5v5. As well as the loss of a tank, there's been some major changes to most of the heroes themselves, and to start the season we'll also see the introduction of Sojourn, Overwatch's first new hero in what has felt like an eternity. Add into the mix the removal of 2CP, being replaced by Push with the new maps that come with it, and we find ourselves looking at a very different game in 2022 compared to the previous 4 Overwatch League seasons. Like previous years, today I wanted to bring you all my power rankings for this upcoming season, but let's just be honest with ourselves for just a minute. Given the changes I've just mentioned, no one's really got a good idea as to how well each team will do, as there's just too many different unknowns at this moment in time. It's for that reason that I don't want to waste too much time going into all the details about each team's rosters and my expectations for them in 2022, as probably by the end of week 1 I'll already have been proven quite wrong for a number of them. Instead, I'm going to say a couple of points about each of the 2 regions, and roughly explain why I've ranked certain teams in different parts of my 2022 Overwatch League power rankings, in the context that I'm ranking for the season as a whole, not just who will be the strongest out of the gate from week number 1. So here we go. Starting with the APAC region, which I think is a little easier to rank than NA, this is what I've got. Beginning with the obvious teams, we have the Shanghai Dragons at number 1 and the LA Valiant in 7th. I believe the general consensus is that the Dragons, on the back of their championship triumph in 2021, still have probably the strongest overall roster in the entire league, with it also being very balanced and well rounded, which should put them in an excellent position as we progress into the early stages of Overwatch 2. The Valiant, meanwhile, look like the reincarnation of the old Chengdu zone. To me, 5 DPS players is honestly crazy, whilst having no subs at all at tank or nor support. Maybe No Hill is seeing something that most others aren't, and I'm really excited to see Dia perform at this level, but compared to those above them, I just have too many concerns about this team, hence why they're last. However, I will say that I do see them winning at least a series at some point this year. Then we have the 5 teams in between, who I think every person seems to have a slightly different opinion on. And I will say that over the course of this season, I do think that these teams likely trade quite a few wins with one another. The Charge have potential across the board, and would perhaps be a middle of the pack team in NA. In APAC though, they look like they lack comparative star players, and I think the main way they'd be able to find success would be through a good early read on Overwatch 2's team play coordination and meta. Hangzhou meanwhile are a team that on paper look really promising, but the roster feels quite unbalanced with 2 tank subs but no subs that support. More importantly, however, their coaching staff is what greatly concerns me. I've not hidden my opinion that I don't rate Changun as a coach, but add to him Miro and Neko and it just feels a bit messy and unproven. Maybe I'll be proven wrong though, with the Spark finally living up to their potential, but I'm not feeling too confident about them right now. Then we have the Dynasty and Fusion, who I ended up placing 2nd and 3rd, positions that I know certain people watching this video will greatly disagree with. But hear me out, as much as these 2 organisations are renowned for disappointing and underperforming their expectations, it's hard to deny that in recent years they haven't been towards the upper end of the APAC region. I will acknowledge that a couple of weeks ago I had these teams below the Hunters, but I'll touch on them in a minute. Both of these teams at the very worst feel like average sides, and I think they'll be able to make good adjustments heading into Overwatch 2. I was higher on these teams nearer the beginning of the off-season, but following the devastating passing of Alarm last year and the sad but understandable recent retirement of Jonak, I think both of these teams possibly see their support lines now as potential weak links. Not bad certainly, but weaker than what they once were. You also have to question whether Soul's decision to just have Smurf as the team's only tank is wise, given his unknown ability on off-tanks, but the fact that they haven't picked up anyone else up to now possibly suggests that the team are happy with how he's performed so far. Fury meanwhile I have very high hopes for, although I am happy that they have at least brought in some cover recently with Belos Ria. The DPS line meanwhile I'm very happy with, and is a key reason why I rank these teams towards the upper end of APAC. The Dynasty have in my opinion one of the best DPS groups in the league, and although I'm proven at the highest level, I'm feeling very positive that MN3 and Zest will provide Carpe with some much needed assistance in this position that will allow him to flourish and focus on his specialty heroes, rather than feel like he has to carry by playing everything. They both definitely have a long way to go before they can seriously challenge Shanghai in my opinion though, but I like the foundations they currently have, and with some smart mid-season pickups they could definitely become future challengers. Lastly there's Chengdu in the middle, and they are such a big what-if scenario given the chaos the org is seemingly going through at this moment in time. I still really like the core that they have, and the fact that they've managed to hold on to lead makes me optimistic that they could definitely come out on top against the likes of Seoul or Philly above them. The loss of RUI though, like a couple of seasons ago, does feel really significant, and I wish we had been able to see the DPS duo of Leaf and Aprita, as they could have made the Hunters even better than what they had last year. Alas, it's really hard to gauge how they will progress over the course of 2022, and that's why I'm not comfortable really placing them anywhere but slap bang in the middle of APAC at number 4, although it wouldn't surprise me at all to see them fight through this chaos and be Shanghai's number 1 challengers ahead of both Seoul and Philadelphia. So that's my APAC ranking. Now we move on to NA, where to be honest, outside of a top and bottom, I really don't have a solid feeling at all, but here it is nonetheless. Let's start with Vancouver and London, who I have at the bottom currently. I don't dislike either of these rosters, to be honest, and I think if developed properly, they could certainly progress up the rankings. Players like Sparker and Poker on the Spitfire, or Aspire, Shockwave and Massa are particular standouts for me. I'm just not sure how they're going to match up against the teams above them though, especially with a lot of pressure on London's rookie support line, as well as for the rookie solo tank False for Vancouver, hence why I'd rather underrate them now than rate them too highly just yet. The top 4 in North America meanwhile, I'm much more comfortable with. Dallas and the Gladiators, like Shanghai, just feel like the most well-rounded squads with top talent at every position, which is why I have them at 1 and 2 respectively. I'm especially looking forward to seeing what LA's DPS trio of Arns, Kevster and Patifan can do. Some could argue that Atlanta share many similarities to both these teams, and should be grouped with them, which is fair given their strong end to last season. However, although I think they'll do well again this year, I do worry that they might end up being a little streaky as they've shown to be in the years past, hence why I've held them back to number 3. The shock at number 4 meanwhile is more of me trying to be a little safer with my expectations for them, as I do rate them very highly. The problem is that unlike the 3 teams I have above them, they are, with the exception of Violet, an entirely rookie roster, which has the potential to stumble out the gate. Now personally, I don't think this will happen, especially as Krusty remains at the helm, but until I see these players perform against Overwatch League level competition, I don't want to get too ahead of myself, even if I think that most of these rookies could become top stars. Having discussed 6 North American teams already, that leaves the mess that is the middle 7 of my North American power rankings, and having looked at other people's power rankings, this feels like the area where there's the most uncertainty amongst the community. In the end, I settled on placing Houston and Toronto nearer the top, as I think they look the most balanced across all 3 roles, and don't really appear to have any major or glaring weaknesses over the competition below them. Boston at the bottom of this pile is perhaps me underrating their squad, which has some nice potential, but outside of Striker and Crimzo, they just feel good, but not great, which is why I'm not sold on them just yet. Their roster is also perhaps a little bloated for my liking. New York's original starting 5 meanwhile looked like a really solid foundation, but it scares me to see how little flexibility they have with no subs across the DPS and support lines, which seems like a massive gamble given the unknowns of Overwatch 2. Also, the recent pickup of Vulcan sends some mixed messaging, and I worry that they're not necessarily going to add more quality pieces down the road, which concerns me for later on in the season, when I think pickups will be needed for a number of teams to properly progress. As for Florida and Paris above them, perhaps I have them both a little high, but I think there's a lot to like about both of these teams. The Eternal solidified upon what was a very impressive showing last year by signing Glister, whilst also moving everyone to a team house, which should massively help them with team building and playing on a stable ping. The Mayhem meanwhile have opted for an ambitious mixed roster, which I'm really looking forward to seeing come together. Support player Majid is an absolute nut, and could make a Khan level introduction while supported by the very experienced pair of Animo and Karif. Someone has also been attracting some buzz, and potential DPS pairing of Hydron and Exy looks really exciting. So overall I have to say that I think Florida could really turn a few heads early on in the season. Last but by no means least is Washington, who feel a bit like NA's version of the Hangzhou Spark, but on drugs. Again, on paper they should be a really good team. I mean, a DPS trio of Decay, Assassin and Happy looks great together, and I think Mag should do really well starting at tank. Their support line perhaps has a few questions, but in theory this team has a really high ceiling. Do I have confidence in them though? Absolutely not. If any team in North America is going to be one to call by a coin flip, I reckon it's this one. As in the past they've been so streaky, and I don't see that changing in 2022. And as a result, I've kind of just put them in the middle, because I have no clue how they'll end up by the end of the year. For those interested in what my combined ranking looks like, here it is. Although to be honest, I wouldn't put too much stock into it at all at this moment in time. Like I said at the beginning of this video, these are just some of my very rough early thoughts, but now I want to hear what you think down in the comments below. On that note though, That's where I'm going to leave it today. So I want to thank you very much for watching, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day.